The bridge has been broken into halves. There is no new part. When asked what to do, the man with glasses was sweating. The front bridge in front of him was only because the owner pulled it a little bit more. The kingpin hole of the bridge was severely broken. The other half of the broken kingpin hole could not be found. In order to repair the damaged front bridge, the man with glasses directly used the silver flower grafting method to repair it. In order to ensure that there was no deviation in the angle during splicing, he first made a clear cutting mark quickly by feeling. In order to cut off the damaged part, the master used an angle grinder. Because the material of the front bridge is relatively hard, this method cannot solve the problem. At this time, he can only use industrial holes. The master first opened a positioning hole at the cutting position and then used a bench drill to drill holes according to the marks made. Because the front bridge is very thick, when cutting with 2 holes, the unconventional cutting of the edges and corners cannot be done. The master can avoid angle deviation by opening holes. After these 4 holes are opened, the 2 holes are cut. This process is a test of the master's cutting skills. The front axle is very thick. In the process of cutting, not only the opening of the gap needs to be adjusted, but also the master's steady technique. This process requires years of experience. The cracked front axle has been cut into 2 halves after the master's careful cutting. The surface after the gap cutting is uneven, so the master needs to use a large angle grinder for careful grinding. The process requires the master to cut the end face to be smooth and flat to ensure that there is no deviation in the angle during the subsequent splicing. After this side is processed, the main pin hole for splicing can be processed. The master uses a concave and convex splicing method. Here, it is necessary to refer to the cutting angle of the front axle for marking. The master uses a caliper to make detailed measurements and use a marker to make clear marks. Before cutting, the side also needs to open a positioning hole and then use a bench drill to cut the corners. The processing process here is basically the same as that of the front axle. With the previous processing experience, the progress of each step is not slow at all. At this time, the master skillfully controls the chair circle. The master cuts the marked part precisely. The kingpin hole for splicing is cut out very quickly. Then the master needs to fix it on the front of the table. He skillfully uses the angle grinder to grind the uneven position to make it smooth. The master can splice it at this time. To ensure that there is no deviation in the angle between the 2 sections during splicing, the master first uses a level to measure the overall level of the front axle and then refers to the intact data on the other side to measure the splicing part. The precise operation prevents the front vertical from deviating. The master uses a large caliper to measure and compare the spacing of the kingpin holes. The master uses a sticky line to measure the height of the kingpin holes. After a series of operations, the master only needs to use electric welding to perform meticulous welding and fixation. To prevent the angle from deviating after welding, another measurement and comparison is required. After ensuring that there is no problem, the master can perform meticulous welding and fixation. The whole welding process is complicated, but it is not simple at all. Because of the welding process, the master needs to strictly control the welding time. The entire front axle took more than an hour to weld. For the sake of beauty, the master needs to grind the uneven welding points on the outside to make them smooth. However, welding alone cannot guarantee the strength of the front axle, so the master needs to perform secondary reinforcement. First, the master drills a positioning hole at the bottom of the front axle and then uses a bench drill to drill the hole thoroughly. Then it can be fixed by damaging the hair. When installing the kingpin, the master uses a small hammer to knock it 4 times. The pin is quickly installed in place. The master only needs to use a grinder to grind the excess position to prevent rust from appearing at the welded position. The rigorous master also needs to spray a layer of black anti-rust paint. Now the broken front axle has been repaired. What do you think of the master's repair method? If there are 10 points, how many points are you willing to give?